This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, if you're going to work remotely for a week or two, there are few places that I can think of within a day's drive from Atlanta that I personally love more than Amelia Island, Florida. And as true as that is, it's good to be back in the ATL. Here's hoping that all moms out there had a joyous Mother's Day celebration. And as this year continues to race by, Memorial Day weekend and the kickoff to summer is just a few days away, if you can believe that. And as typically is the case here on Franchise Today, no dog days of summer here, as the lineup of guests will continue at full throttle right through the summer months. And speaking of great guests, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Sam Caiucci last week, as he shared so much with us about One Huddle and the utilization of gamification for more effective training, onboarding, and even franchise recruitment. Sam is a really smart guy and has his finger on the pulse of this amazing paradigm shift in teaching, learning, and retention. I'm quite certain we'll be hearing a lot more from him in the years ahead. Today, we're going to hear from another of the smartest guys I know, and not just in one or two, but all three of my favorite market sectors: food, franchising, and technology. Today, my guest is my good friend, IFA board member and Hand and Stone CEO, John Teza, who joins us for an unprecedented third-time appearance on Franchise Today. And it's kind of funny how the scheduling worked out, with John's appearance following Sam Caiucci, as it was John who actually introduced me to Sam in the first place. How about that? Okay, a quick timeout, and I'm back in a flash with John Teza, and we've got lots to discuss, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments, or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise, either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. Today, we're joined by John Teza, a powerhouse in the franchise world, whose journey is nothing short of remarkable. From his early days in the sandwich franchise business at Quiznos to his current role as CEO of Hand and Stone, John has navigated uncharted waters, including the challenges of a global pandemic, while driving impressive growth and innovation. You'll hear how John has leveraged his deep experience across restaurants, technology, and franchising to steer Hand and Stone towards a stronger, more resilient future. We'll explore the vital role of mentorship in franchise success, adapting to virtual business models, strategic growth through acquisitions, and how John is engaging the next generation of franchise leaders while always keeping an eye on unit-level economics and innovation. Whether you're a seasoned franchise veteran or just starting your entrepreneurial journey, there's something in this episode for everyone. John Teza, welcome back to Franchise Today.
Thank you, Stan Friedman. Incredibly happy to be back with you.
Always a pleasure to be anywhere you are. If I'm any place you are, I'm in the right place.
Likewise, my friend. You know that.
I took a look this afternoon on LinkedIn, and you're one of those that pegs the needle on number of shared connections with me. It's something like 1,968. Oh, it says Bill Edwards, Ron Feldman, and 1,968 other mutual connections.
What a great two names to show up first.
Hey, really, can't do much
So,
better than that.
yes, yes. The somewhat self-deprecating statement at that point is that just means we've both been around for a long time, right? But I won't say that because while that is actually true, what that really means is that we're both super intentional about helping people out, and within this great business that we've been a part of for so long, that's what it's all about.
Well, that's a great segue into the first question of the day for every guest that takes the hot seat, John. And that is, we didn't go into business or go to college with the intention of becoming executives in franchising. So we didn't find franchising, it found us. What was that looking like for you, and when was that?
Yeah, indeed, that is true. I've been in franchising my entire career. The last time we talked, I think I said, and I've said often to people, I didn't even realize that I was in quote unquote franchising for probably the first 10 years of my career. Although I worked for a franchisor, it was a pretty insular environment, and we were focused on what was happening within that brand. And it was only when I picked my head up and found the IFA that I realized that there was this whole community called franchising that I was a part of, and quite frankly, really didn't even know it. I started with my first multi-site consumer business 60 days after I graduated from college. And almost 28 years later, I've never been part of anything that wasn't directly involved, not directly or indirectly, directly involved with the franchising model. And so it's absolutely ingrained in what I do and how I do it.
Kind of funny that I've got about 8 years on you in terms of franchising. And though those 8 years were also in a very insular place that was not involved at all with IFA, it was the real estate brokerage business. But in 1997, I found franchising's bigger part of the world, the IFA, and at the same time about that you did, I guess. And funny that we both landed in sandwich businesses to do it. So you were at Quiznos, I was at Blimpie, and the guy who got me involved was on the New York State Restaurant Association board and on the IFA board. Do you remember Chuck Lenis?
I don't. That was a little bit before my time, I suspect.
Well, the late Chuck Lenis is who I give credit to for getting me into the water neck deep with IFA. He
Yeah.
told me I'll have to do my obligatory 40 hours a week for Blimpie, but then he made me commit to 40 hours a month for IFA service, for which I would do all the heavy lifting and he would get all the credit. And he told me that right out front and said, that's just the way it's going to be.
I don't know if I ever told you this story. The first event that I ever went to, my first quote unquote franchising event, was a Franchise Leadership and Development Conference in Atlanta. And the guest speaker was, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the CEO of Godfathers. Why am I drawing a blank on his name?
Oh, no, I know who you mean. I know exactly who you mean. He was a talk show radio host here in Atlanta for years.
He ran for president. And after the guest speaker, I was so inspired that I ran up and I grabbed Gary and I said, I want to get involved. I want to get involved in this franchising thing. I want to get involved in your conference. And he grabbed me by the arm and he dragged me over to meet you.
It was Herman Cain. That was the name.
That's right. It was Herman Cain. And I remember, be on the blade. Don't be on the cutting edge, but be on the blade. That was his big speech.
So here's my take out of that conference. I remember that conference vividly as well. And what I remember most about Herman Cain was hearing him tell a joke. And he was talking about how of all the things that you think are out to get you in business, look out for the Asians. The Asians are going to get you. Taxation, immigration, legislation, all them Asians.
That's funny. I don't remember that one.
I do. I remember my eyes popped open wide like, where's this going?
Where is this going? Exactly. Oh my goodness. And that is an absolute true story. That is
Wow.
that is the very first entry point for me into this franchise ecosystem. And from there, and you were a great mentor. From there, Ron Feldman, Lane Fisher, Shelley Sun, all became my initial kind of Sherpas into the franchise community.
Wow. Well, I'm humbled. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
And you made it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I did find Ron next, so. And
So-
you may not remember this story, or maybe you do. Shortly after I joined Jersey Mike's, I was on a site visit, and Brian Summers and I called you, and you recounted the story of being in the walk-in cooler at the original Jersey Mike's with Tony Conza, with none other than Tony Conza.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that for sure. Well, the sandwich business was good to me, and obviously it was a great starting place for you. Walk us down the road a bit in the Wayback Machine and tell us what came after that.
Yeah, so I spent 13 years with the Quiznos brand. Was fortunate to have spent a lot of good years with them, and we grew very, very quickly. And I was exposed to just so much about the franchise business, the restaurant business. My foundation was in operations. I moved pretty quickly into development, into franchise development, and ultimately strategy and really how to grow the brand. And then I left Quiznos and I came back home. Laura and I moved back to New Jersey. We decided that we wanted to raise our kids at the Jersey Shore. And I ran back into Peter Kanker. I had known Peter from when I was a little bit younger, and we had sort of been respectfully known each other on the, in the circuit, if you will. And Peter asked me to join. He and Hoyt and Mike Manzo and Rich Hope and the folks that were getting ready to grow that brand. And it was a tremendous experience. I spent 5 years with Peter and with the Jersey Mike's brand and did a lot of the foundational work that the brand today is built upon, and just incredibly enriched my career. Really, I ask people all the time about what's the most foundational role that they had. That's a very common interview question I ask folks. And then I follow up and ask how that shows up in their work today. And I'm confident that that was the most foundational role that I had, was as the Chief Development Officer of Jersey Mike's. And the work that we did and what I learned from that franchise community and have been able to apply throughout the rest of my career is priceless.
No doubt. And look at Brian Summers. I mean, he's grown through that brand. He was a kid when I first met him, and he's still in a lot of ways that same personality, but look how much he's grown professionally.
Brian is a tremendous development professional and has been such a critical part to that brand's success. You love Brian's energy. You love his passion for that brand. You love passion he has for developing units and helping franchisees become successful beyond maybe even their own wildest dreams. It's been a joy. It's been a real joy to see Brian grow. I still text with him frequently, including about 15 minutes ago. He's an important guy in my life.
Amen. Same here. So take us down the road. What came after Jersey Mike's?
So I spent a little bit of time in Corner Bakery, which is a Rourke portfolio company. I had sort of higher expectations of my ability to travel back and forth to Dallas every week than I probably should have. Laura and I got pretty sick of that pretty quick. But one really important thing that came out of my time there was a relationship that I built with Frank Pacey, who was the then CEO. Frank is one of the smartest, one of the most intelligent, one of the most intuitive people that I've ever spent time with in the restaurant industry. And in addition to all that, has a huge heart. And so getting to spend a year and a half with him was invaluable, particularly as we worked through then a transformation plan for that business. Then I left Corner Bakery to join Aziz and Susan at NRD. And again, I think about foundational aspects of my career. The time that I spent with Aziz and with Susan building out the portfolio there was incredibly beneficial. Number one, just spending time with Aziz and spending time in and around his approach to focusing on unit level economics and incredible importance of driving that and making sure that franchisees are successful and profitable absolutely underscores the work that we're doing here at Hand and Stone today. And I have Aziz to thank for that, for making sure that that focus was ingrained in me. And say the same thing about just a general approach on people from Susan, the time I got to spend with Susan, and the way that she connects with so many different people in so many different ways, and how intentional she is about it. That was something she instilled in me, and it will be beneficial for the rest of my career. That's why I got exposed to technology and technology investing in a really big way. We built a really significant technology investment portfolio, and knocking on wood, and they're not there yet, but there's a couple of those investments that we think still today could be significant, potentially unicorn-like exits. And so it was a really important time for me. It was the first time that I had spent any part of my career outside of an operating company. And so spending 3 years as an investor and somebody who was assessing, I probably looked at 50 or 60 businesses over the course of those 3 years. And it significantly accelerated my ability to really assess a brand and to assess a brand strategy and how best best to amplify that on a go-forward basis. And I think, again, a lot of the work that I'm doing here at Hand and Stone today, that we're doing here today at Hand and Stone, is informed by the really important, concentrated 3 years of just assessing other businesses.
We'll come back and talk about Hand and Stone on the other side of a break. Are there any other milestones between NRD and Jersey Mike's to share here before we go to break?
No, but I do think there's two things I did along the way. I got involved with the IFA, initially with the IFA Foundation as a trustee, and I served 2 terms as a trustee. And that was where I really had an opportunity to begin to spend time with some of the biggest names and the brightest minds in franchising. And the approach was always, how do we make franchising better? How do we make franchising more accessible? How do we improve education? How do we improve access? But in working on all of those things, I also had an opportunity to spend time with folks that had built some of the greatest businesses in American franchising history. And it was such a joy to do that. I'm now on the IFA board. I'm serving my first term as a board member. I was incredibly honored to have been asked to serve, and I'm really enjoying that work. But really, the collective experience of being directly involved in the IFA community has been incredibly beneficial. I also spent about 2.5 years as a member of the National Restaurant Association when I was with NRD. And much in the same way that my time with the IFA board and the IFA community has been beneficial, that time I spent with the best leader in some of the biggest restaurant companies in the US was also incredibly foundational and just taught me a lot. And I built some incredibly meaningful relationships during that period.
You led quite a life, John, of meaningful relationships with some of the best minds in both the restaurant as well as the franchise and even the technology business.
Mhm.
And so you've had 3 tracks that have kind of run parallel, but all 3 of them intertwined. And I think that's kind of experience that is pretty unique. I don't know too many people that can call a trifecta like that. Some people have done ops and sales, and some have done Z and ZOR, but restaurant, being involved in technology, being involved in franchising, all 3 of those at the same time, and you've woven all that into some fabric that's just kind of, I don't know anyone else like you, guy. You're it.
For better or for worse, right, Stan?
You bet. We're talking today with John Teza, CEO of Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa. We're going to take a quick time out, but don't go away. We're coming right back.
Franchise Today will be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by Profit Keeper, the #1 franchise analytics platform for franchisors and franchisees. Trusted by more than 150 brands and 50,000 franchisees, Profit Keeper connects KPI, benchmark, and royalty data from your locations, groups, and territories. With Profit Keeper, you see stats in real time, presented simply and graphically. This makes it easy to identify actionable information for franchisees to help them drive profitability and brand growth at the unit level. No more wrangling data and guessing what works and what doesn't. To learn more and to get started, visit profitkeeper.com/franchise today. And we are back with John Teza, CEO of Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa. So 3 years now, 4 years, how long are you there?
I joined Hand and Stone in August of 2020. So it'll be 5 years in just a couple of months.
But you took the CEO spot when?
August of 2021, a year to the day.
So you walked in post-COVID to big boy shoes.
Oh, yeah.
What did that look like in your world?
Well, when I joined Hand and Stone, our spas were not yet even back open from COVID. When I made the commitment, when Todd and I agreed that I was going to come on board, our spas had been closed since about mid-March, and this was probably sometime in, I don't know, June. And it would be another 60 days before all of the spas in the system were open and operating. And it would be another 3 or 4 months until all of the spas in the system were open and operating at full capacity. Because for quite a while, even after massage was deemed an essential service, our skincare business was inhibited by our inability to deliver services unless the individual was wearing a mask, which sounds kind of funny now. How do you give a facial when the client is wearing a mask? But that's what our franchisees had to deal with. And, I laugh. I've told this story often, so I may have even told you. I've been married for 24 years. I've been with Laura, my wife. We've known each other since high school. She's been a constant part of my life, my entire adult life. Or when I decided to take the job with Hand and Stone, she sat me down and said, "Hey, pal, I've been with you all the way. I've been your ride or die. And you've made a lot of good decisions, and we're very fortunate. But I got to ask you, are you sure about this one? And because the spas were still closed, and it was, we were in the middle of a pandemic. But listen, I had been a member of Hand and Stone since 2009. I knew the brand inside and out from a consumer perspective. John built the original Hand and Stone in Toms River, New Jersey. Laura and I lived a mile away. And as the brand began to proliferate through Monmouth and Ocean County, an area that was near and dear to our heart, it was pretty clear to me as a brand builder that there was something special about it. And so it had been on our radar screen for a little while. Todd Leff is a well-known individual in the franchise industry, particularly here in the Philadelphia market. And I had a lot of good relationships through Philadelphia. And so our paths had crossed a little bit. Lane Fisher, who was a mentor, is a mentor and a guide to me, had been doing their legal work. And so, when I got the call on it, it was pretty exciting. And my relationship with the brand as a consumer combined with, this clear recognition that there was something really special about it from a business and a brand standpoint, it became a really easy decision. The spa's not being open, notwithstanding, of course. And we've been on a really solid path since. I think we were about 440 spas when I joined the business. We're 660 today across the US and Canada. We've done some really interesting things from an acquisition standpoint. We acquired a small brand in Canada called Massage Experts, initially with the thought that we would convert them to Hand and Stones. But what we realized is we're really serving two different need states there. And so we've allowed the two brands to exist side by side. We've built a company operating division by acquiring high volume Hand and Stone franchise spas. So we're up to 15 spas. That's about 5% of our total EBITDA. And it's going well, and we want to continue to grow that. And then over the last 2 years, we've done something that is really pretty spectacular and something I'm really proud of. We did what we call acquisition conversions, where we partnered with the franchisor of a smaller brand to create a situation where it was beneficial for those franchisees that could convert to our brand to convert to Hand and Stone. And so it's one of, if not the most win-win-win things that I've done in my career, because the converting spa was able to access the scale mechanisms that come with a much larger system. The clients of the converting spa were able to access a larger network. And as you probably remember, the portable nature and the flexible nature of our membership is one of the things that really is a strength of the relationship with the Hand and Stone brand and Hand and Stone client. It was a positive for our existing franchisees who were in the market because we were able to grow the brand's presence without diluting the service provider pool and without really shifting any of the consumer demand, because those spas were open and operating. And then, of course, it was beneficial for the franchisor, for the IP holder, and certainly beneficial for us. And so we did that in 2023. We converted I think it was 23 Massage Green units to Hand and Stone. Those spas are doing fantastic post conversion. We did it again last year. A significant number of the a significant composition of the Levita system converted to Hand and Stone. And we're getting to the point now where those franchisees are really comfortable in the new brand environment and starting to grow. A big learning there is when you do a POS conversion on top of a brand conversion, it introduces a lot more complexity than doing it without the POS conversion. But it's been an exciting way to grow, and it's really been a nice complement to our de novo organic growth with our existing franchisees and with new folks entering the system. And so it's been a great couple of years. We've continued to grow average unit volume. We've got a tremendous amount of sort of transformational initiatives across really every aspect of the business: demand generation, operations, technology, and BI. And we're just excited about where we're going.
So for a guy who spent so many years in the penny profit margin space of food and restaurants, you're in a much better position for profitability in a brand like Hand and Stone, are you not?
Well, four-wall profitability is a focus for us here, just like it is anywhere. And this is a supply-constrained environment, and our franchise owners have struggled a little bit with upward wage movement. Really, it was the most acute in the period right after COVID, where a lot of folks had taken themselves out of the employment pool, and in particular, massage therapists had taken themselves out of the employment pool. we've seen that wane. We've seen the acute nature of that upward pressure wane, but it's sort of like inflation, right? 2.5% inflation is better than 9% inflation, but 2.5% inflation is still 2.5% inflation. And so our franchise owners have continued to deal with upward pressure on their labor costs and everything else, the rest of their fixed costs, whether we're talking about insurance, whether we're talking about really the whole risk management suite of solutions, whether we're talking about rent, talking about cost of advertising, right? They felt upward pressure throughout their P&L. And so we've been very intentional working with our unit level economic committee, looking for opportunities to improve four-wall profitability for our franchisees. One of the biggest things that we've done is that we rolled out Profit Keeper across the entire system. We've sponsored that. Not only have we sponsored it, but we've partnered with our preferred accounting partners and our franchisees' accountants, individual accountants, to get everything put into a common chart of accounts so that we can start to look at things on an apples to apples comparison. This initiative started in 2023, really took root in 2024. We're up to about 50% of our system are now contributing their P&Ls on a monthly basis. We've got a really robust data set that we can now rely upon. We've got a significant portion of our P&Ls are in for all of 2024, and we're starting to be able to cut that in ways that we can create benchmarking opportunities to help franchisees understand where they're running a little ahead or a little behind on particular expense items. And so it's in its nascent stage. Profit Keeper has been an incredible partner. It's still in its infancy, I would say, but it's going to be a really significant part of our franchise execution moving forward. A couple other things we've done. We looked at our loyalty. We have a very robust loyalty rewards program, but what we realized is that it had been a significant amount of time since we had upped the redemption thresholds. And so while our EFT, our effective member fee, had steadily increased over time, and of course, while CPI exploded over a long period of time, we had not looked at our redemption thresholds in about 7 or 8 years. And so we did a deep analysis and determined the right level of advancement there, and we rolled that out, and we've seen a significant benefit to our franchisees and their P&Ls as a result. We rolled out a new labor tool for our front desk labor. The most variable aspect of our expense is our front desk labor. And, it's a tricky thing. You got to make sure you got enough staff. What happens in our spas at our front desks is not administrative. I mean, of course, they fulfill administrative tasks, but what they're really meant to do is to sell, right? Is to help people become members, to help people become individuals that have a recurring relationship with the brand, either through gift cards or through membership, to help people pre-book. It is a sales function. It's a critical balance between, I got to have enough people there, but I can't have too many people there that it's actually cutting into my four-wall profitability. And so what we were able to develop is an algorithm that helps franchisees understand the right staffing levels for their front desk, which has had a positive impact on four-wall profitability. So it's work that never stops. It is the always-on work of being a franchisor. We are certainly not where we need to be yet, but an area that we will continue to invest in.
So, John, you've been through a lot. You've seen it all: technology, restaurant, franchising, COVID. What do the tea leaves look like for the next 1, 3, or even 5 years out, if you can see that far anymore?
Wow. I think it's a fool's errand to look 3 years out. I mean, we are certainly planning on a 3 to 5 year basis, right? Our private equity partners, Harvest Partners, they've been invaluable in helping us think about where this business is going on a long-term basis. And so we certainly have planned out to kind of 5 years and beyond, but trying to peg tactically or even strategically on much more than a kind of 12 to 18 month basis right now is hard to do. We did just complete a really important assessment for us with Boston Consulting Group, where for the first time ever, we have a real true sense of our primary demand spaces and who we're pursuing. And so I think about what the next 12 to 18 months looks like through the lens of what's going to be important in those folks in their eyes and our primary customer archetypes' lives. I think it's clear that we're going to see discretionary spending be negatively impacted. I think we've seen that already. What we're hearing from the economists that we work with is that discretionary spending levels are going to remain relatively flat, but that the consumer is going to be hyper discerning in how they choose to allocate those discretionary dollars. And That's an important component for us. We're fortunate. Our primary modality, massage, has proven incredibly resilient. It is a experience. It is an occasion that our client base values deeply. And we've been fortunate. Our attrition rates, even right now in this moment, our attrition rates have kind of never been better than they are today. And so that's a real testament to the strength of the relationship between our client base and the brand, but also a real testament to the importance of massage in their lives. Our skincare business, which is a really important component of our business to us, it is one of the most important aspects of our strategic moat, has felt a little more pressure. It's a little closer to a service that folks can trade out of if they're feeling a little bit of discretionary spending pressure. We're still in really good shape. We're still the largest deliverer of skincare services on an aggregated basis of anyone in the world. But we know we want to continue to grow that business, particularly because we know that business is a supply constrained environment. So discretionary spending, we expect the consumer to be highly discerning there. We expect interest rates to stay kind of where they are. Again, the economists that we're working with are not suggesting that there's going to be any significant downward move there. The implication there, of course, is that cost of capital is going to remain a little higher and that we're going to have to think creatively about how we grow and where we grow and who we grow with. Labor markets, the jobs number came out today, it was almost 200,000. It blew everybody away. The labor market has proven to be so incredibly resilient. Yeah, on the other hand, last week, there were more filings for unemployment last week than any month since just immediately after the sort of COVID bounce back recession and contraction in early 2022. So there's a little bit of noise in the labor market. That's a double-edged sword for us, right? Because our clients, the folks that are critically important to our business, their relationship with our brand is entirely reliant upon them staying gainfully employed, right? We want them to continue to stay gainfully employed and stay managing their physical and emotional well-being through their relationship with Hand and Stone. On the other hand, a little bit of a cooling in the labor market helps us on the labor side of our business. And we are actually up about 10% in massage hours year over year this year to date, which is our bogey. That's our kind of golden metric. One of our golden metrics is that we want to be up 10% in massage therapist hours on a year-over-year basis, and we're there. And that's a real positive. And you can see this like super bifurcation in the system of the folks that are up in hours are also up in prospects, and the folks that are down in hours are down in prospects. So we need the labor market to stay strong, really, for both sides of the platform, for the supply side and for the consumer side. But I think that's what we're seeing. We're fortunate that we don't have a lot of exposure to any nonsense in the import-export market. The tariffs are going to have an impact on us indirectly as it potentially creates a little bit of consumer weakness, but directly it's pretty minimal impact. I think we're watching what's happening with government employment. I do think that there's an opportunity that folks trade out of if this does kind of catch a second wind. There's folks that trade out of that part of the economy and potentially into franchising. I think that's a positive for franchising because there'll be folks that are looking for their next juncture or the next part of their career. So look, I'm certainly not an economist. I read what's critically important for us to understand for the business and try to apply that on a day-to-day basis.
Well, before we run completely out of time, and I've got to leave time to ask you for contact info, but what have I not asked you, John, that maybe you wished I did?
That's a good question, Stan. What an incredible time to be in business, right? Dynamic, difficult, uncertain, no question about it, right? The rules of engagement are being rewritten, it feels like, on a day-to-day basis, but what an exciting time to be growing a brand, what an exciting time to be participating in this incredible engagement that we call America. And I know there's a lot of hand-wringing going on in a lot of different circles, but regardless of who you voted for, regardless of who you back, what an incredibly exciting time to be alive and to be growing a business. I feel blessed just to be here.
Another amen, brother. How about some contact info, John? No doubt there are people wanting to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can always be reached at my email, jteza@handandstone.com. You can find me on LinkedIn for sure at John Teza. You can find me on Twitter at Janus Brands Inc.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Time went by way too quickly, and trying to make sense out of this is going to be a real challenge when it comes to editing, John. Trying to bring you down to a 30-minute podcast, I don't know if it can be done.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. Of course, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. It's an honor to be a part of your platform, and I can't thank you enough for having me.
How about that for a close? John Teza, CEO of Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa. Thanks so much for joining us, John.
Thank you, Stan.
Well, that's a wrap for today, but there's a lot more coming in the weeks ahead, including Peter Yang, co-founder and managing partner at PokeWorks, Josh Wall, Chief Operating Officer at Unleashed Brands, industry veteran and BNI Global CEO and IFA Chair, Mary Kennedy Thompson, to name just a few. Subscribe to Franchise Today at franchisetodaypodcast.com or wherever you go to chase podcasts, and you'll never miss an episode. Next week, I'm joined by Laura Kellogg, President and CEO of Curious Jane, where their culture is defined by their love of franchise marketing, their drive to uncover solutions, and the connections that they build with one another. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.